What is financial aid? Financial aid helps you pay for college. It makes it more affordable. So financial aid comes in different forms. It could be grants, which is grants and scholarships, which means free money. And it also has loans. A lot of people don't think loans are financial aid, but they actually are. So all those factors help reduce the cost of financial or the cost of education. So there's 3 different types of aid. The first is a merit-based aid. This would be based on your academics. So your GPA from high school. It could be your SATs, your ACTs. So for our school, I'm sure this is what happens at other institutions as well. You would submit all your grades, and then the admissions council would determine your academic scholarship. So that is strictly based on your grades. Another form of scholarship is an athletic scholarship. Athletic scholarship is based on your athletic ability. So if it's a D1 or D2 school that you're attending, they do provide athletic scholarships. So if it's something you're interested in, I would reach out to the coach from that school. And then if they're interested in you, they could possibly offer you some form of scholarship. Sometimes they can give you a full ride, or they can give you a partial scholarship. Also, there's need-based aid. This is based on your family's ability to pay for education. The way that we determine need is based on a formula. So basically the definition of, the way that we determine it is based off of taking the cost of attendance. I'm going to go through what this means after this slide, minus the expected family contribution, and that's what equals the financial need. So the cost of attendance is basically like an inflated budget we look at. It doesn't mean that's the actual cost of education at that school. It's just a number we work with. So the tuition fees, the books, the room and board, transportation, and personal expenses. So obviously you're not going to get charged transportation or personal expenses. The only items that you'd be charged is tuition fees and room and board if you're a resident. Also, I know there's some schools that do add books to their bill. I know our school doesn't. So it's just an inflated number that we work with. The expected family contribution is basically what the government assumes you and the student and the family will contribute to their education. I call it like a fantasy number because sometimes it can be high. So what the government does is they have like a huge formula to determine what the EFC is. So all the variables that go into that formula are on the FAFSA. It's not what our office calculates. So once you submit the FAFSA, that FAFSA tells us what your expected family contribution is. It can range from 0 all the way to like 99,000. So the lower the EFC is, the more need there is. So the more aid, the higher, the less aid. And it doesn't matter what school you're going to. Whatever school you put on your FAFSA, it's going to be the same expected family contribution. So going back to that formula, the cost of attendance minus the EFC equals the financial need. So that is how we determine students and their financial aid. All right, so the steps to receive financial aid. So obviously you would want to file a FAFSA, but even before the FAFSA, you have to do one step before it. The first step is to apply for an FSA ID and password. So this actually acts as a signature for the student and the parent. The FSA ID and password, the student has to have one, and then one parent has to have one. It should take about 5 minutes to do. What they're going to do is they're going to ask you some security questions. I believe that they ask you, you can select 2 questions that they have, but then you have to come up with your own. I would suggest to make sure it's a question that you will always know, because there's a lot of times that students get locked out and they do not remember their password, and they have to use those security questions. And like I said, I'm emphasizing that you have to make sure it's something you remember, because I remember I had a student in my office and I was helping her try to get her FSA and password reset. And she put what is my future daughter's name going to be? And she couldn't remember. So I would suggest something like, you know, where you were born, so something that you will always remember. So after this, I'm actually going to, I'm sorry. So the second step is to apply for the FAFSA. So the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Student Aid. I'm emphasizing the free because a lot of the cases, there's students that Google FAFSA and there might be an application that comes up where they're saying that you have to pay for the application. You do not have to pay for the application. It is free. So just make sure you go to the right site. To go to the FAFSA, you would go to www.fafsa.ed.gov. Before you start, you want to make sure you have certain items with you. First, you'd want to have your FSA ID and password, you and your parents. You'd want yours and your parents' social security number. You also, if you are if you're eligible non-citizen, you want your alien registration number. You'd want the federal code, which I'll get into later on. And then you would want your tax information handy, or W-2s if you didn't file. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show you parts of the FAFSA. It's not going to show you every question, but I do want to show you how it's broken down so you're not surprised by it. So when you so you start off by hitting start here. So you'll see start here. You wouldn't do the one that's a returning user. You just say the one that says new to the FAFSA process. So you would start here. And then when you start, you're going to sign in with your FSA or email with your password. So once you get past that, there's going to be an item called a save key. This basically helps you save your information. So say that you want to do maybe part of the FAFSA, but then you're getting tired. This allows you to go back to that transaction. So this save key is strictly for that one transaction. Once you submit the FAFSA, you do not have to remember that save key anymore. All right, so this is also important. So when you sign in, they're going to ask you which FAFSA you're going to be doing. This is a common mistake I see a lot. So if you guys are seniors going to college next year, you'd want to do the 21-22 FAFSA, not the 2021. To make it easier for you to remember, you're starting fall 2021 and spring 2022. So you'd want to make sure you're doing that. The 2021 one is, sorry, there's a lot of 20s, is for this current year. All right, so as you can see on the top, there are 8 sections. The first section is the student demographic. So what they ask you is just your address, your social security number, which I think is actually already preloaded in there, your date of birth. They want to know what high school you went to, just those type of items. Another thing is they're going to ask you what gender. If you put a male, they are going to prompt you to see if you want to register for selective service. If you're between 18 to 25, you have to say you want to register, because if you don't, you will not be eligible for financial aid. So say that you don't register and we get your FAFSA, it's going to be a red flag for us, and we have to send a notice in the mail saying you have to register. So you either have to go back into your FAFSA and register, or you have to sign up on the sss.gov website, and then you have to show proof of it. So don't forget to do that one. They're also going to ask you, like, what degree are you working towards? So your first bachelor's, just questions like that. Then you're going to get into the school section. You can add up to 10 schools on your FAFSA. So when you put the school's information, you can do 2 ways. One, you can use the federal code. So it's a code that represents that school. In most cases, you're not going to know what the federal code is. So they give you an option to search the school. So if you just say what state it is, what city, and then you can search the school. Once you add the school, it is going to ask you what your housing situation is going to be. Meaning, are you going to live on campus? Are you coming from home, or are you off campus? I would say this is a really important question to get correct, or I mean, you can always adjust it if you're still kind of back and forth, if you're gonna either commute or be a resident. But the reason why this question is important to get right is because when we get a FAFSA and we see that you want to be a resident, we're going to package you based on being a resident. So you want to make sure that's correct, because say hypothetically you want to be a resident, but you ended up commuting. Well, you're going to lose aid because your need is less as a commuter. So going the other way, if you say you're going to be a commuter, but you're a resident, you actually could possibly get more aid. So you want to make sure that's correct. And usually you can make sure it's correct is when you get your award letter. I know on our award letters on the top, it kind of like summarizes saying this is based on being undergraduate, as an undergraduate full-time student, being a commuter. So it'll tell you on your award letter what the status is. So you just want to make sure that's correct. The next section is dependency status. This basically lets us know if you do not have to put your parents on your FAFSA. The only ways that you do not have to put the parents' information on there is for a few reasons. You can't just not include them. You don't have to put your parents' information on there if you have a kid and you support them. If you're a veteran, if you are 24 years old or older, if you're emancipated or homeless. But if you're emancipated or homeless, you actually have to show documentation. So if you're emancipated, we would need the court documents. So those are the reasons that would make you independent. You can't use the reason that, oh, I don't live in the house anymore. It doesn't make you independent. So the items that I just mentioned, that's the only way that you can be technically independent. So then it's going to get into the parents' information. So you're going to have to include their, social security number, their name, their email, just information like that. And then they want to know the house size, who's in the house and who's in college. And there's going to be a lot more questions. I'm just kind of giving you an idea. The next one is the parents' financial information. So they're going to ask you, so if you're doing the 21-22 FAFSA, you will have to put your 2019 taxes in. They're always going to go 2 years back. So at that point, if you filed your taxes, you should have them done. So I would make sure you have your tax information with you. So when you get to this point, you have two options. You can actually you see that button that says the link to the IRS. What happens is if you click that and they're going to confirm your mailing address, and you have to be very specific about your mailing address. If it has to match perfectly. So for example, if you live on 123 Delaware Avenue, did you spell that avenue on your taxes or did you abbreviate it? You have to make sure that's correct, because if it's not correct, it's not going to link. So I would just make sure you check that on your tax return. So anyway, if you are able to link the taxes or link to the IRS, what they do is they transfer the tax information on your FAFSA, so you do not have to manually do it. If by any chance it doesn't work, because it's possible that it doesn't work, you can manually put the information in. And don't be intimidated by it, because it does tell you step by step where to go. It's going to say line 26. It's going to tell you exactly where to look on your tax return. Also, another thing I want to point out is if it gets to your tax information and there's any questions you have, like say if there's anything about assets or something, you see the question mark on the right-hand side. If you need more information about what they're asking and what they're looking for, you just click that question mark and they will go into more detail of what they need. Also, there's a help number that they have on the FAFSA website if you want to talk to somebody. Now for the student financial information, same thing. You can use the IRS data retrieval tool if the student filed, or you can manually put it in. That's only if you filed your taxes. If you didn't work, then you would just say I did not file, and then you would just say 0 for your income. Or if maybe you worked but you didn't file, you can say I'm not filing, and then you just put in the number that's on your W-2. Then you're going to get to the sign and submit section. So you would have to make sure that the parent signs the FAFSA. If they do not sign the FAFSA with their FSA ID and password, the FAFSA will not calculate. There will be an error on it. So you, like I said, you only need one parent to get an FSA ID. You do not need to get both parents. But just make sure, so going back to the parent's financial information, if you put yourself as parent one, you're going to click the button that says, I'm going to sign as parent one. Or if you put yourself as parent two, the parent that has the FSA ID, you're going to sign as parent two. And then then you would sign, but I think since you already signed in with your FSA ID, I don't think you have to go through that process. I think it's already going to say the student signed with their FSA ID. So then once you and the parent sign, you're going to hit submit the FAFSA now. Then you're going to get a confirmation page. So this brings me to step 2. You're going to complete your TAP application. So as you can see, it's going to say, congratulations, your name. It's going to tell you it's been processed. They also send you an email confirmation to tell you it's gone through. The one thing I really want to point out on this confirmation page is where I have that circle. It says start your state application to apply. This is important because a lot of students don't fill out their TAP application after the FAFSA. But there is a button so you can proceed to do that. If you decide you don't want to do the TAP application right now, that's totally fine. I mean, it's totally up to you, but if you decide that you want to fill the TAP application later, you just have to wait like 3 days to go in. And I'll get more into where to go on the TAP application when I get further into my presentation, but I just wanted to point out that there is a button that brings you straight to the TAP application. So what happens is once the FAFSA is processed, usually takes about 2 to 3 business days, that information is going to go to all the schools and universities that you put on your FAFSA. And then afterwards, the student, you will get a student aid report. It basically is a summary of what you put on your FAFSA. I would recommend just reviewing your your SAR, because you might have made a mistake and you didn't notice. I've seen many times where maybe somebody meant to put, I don't know, I'm just gonna throw this out there, 100,000, and they accidentally put 1 million. Obviously that's gonna negatively affect their financial aid. So you just wanna make sure you double check it. Also, it's gonna show by it processing, it tells us, the school, what your expected family contribution is, which I touched on before earlier, which means like, that tells us what the financial need is for the student. Then once we get the your FAFSA, we craft up an aid package for you and we send out an award letter. Depending on each school, like for us, I mean, everyone has a different timeline. For us, so the FAFSA opens up October 1st. And we actually don't start packaging students till mid-November. So other schools might start later. I would say if you don't get an award letter by, I don't know, maybe end of November, early December, I would give that school a call. But you have to make sure you're accepted though, because for us, if the student is not accepted, we will not put together a financial aid package for the student. So then when you review the financial aid award letter, you can sign it and then send it back to the financial aid office. If you have any questions, I mean, with us, this is a common question we get a lot. We're going to send the award letter. It's not a bill. So it's not going to tell you right there how much it's going to cost. So I would suggest if there's a school you really want to go to and you get your award letter, it doesn't hurt to reach out and just say, hey, I got my award letter. Can you give me an estimate of what it's going to cost? And then they can help you out with that. All right. So on your award letter, there's going to be different types of aid. There's going to be federal aid, there's going to be state aid, and then there's going to be institutional aid. So I'm going to go through the different types and get into more detail about it. Let's see. So federal aid is the Pell Grant, the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Those two are free anytime. Like I said, if anytime you see grant or scholarship, it's free money. Then there's Stafford loans, which you would eventually have to pay back. And I will go into more detail about that. And then work study. The first item is Pell. This is based off the highest calculated need. So I don't know, when I mentioned the expected family contribution, that actually tells us if a student is Pell eligible. So if your expected family contribution is about, I think it's like 5,100 or less, you are eligible for the Pell Grant. If you're past that, then you're not eligible. To get the Pell Grant, you have to be enrolled at least part-time. You have to be going through your first bachelor's degree. If you're going for your second one, you will not be eligible for it. You can get Pell up to 6 years. Also, the Pell range for this year is $639 all the way to $6,345. Each year it goes up a little bit. We have to wait till the government gives us the Pell charts. The Supplemental Opportunity Grant, this is a campus-based program. What I mean by that is the government gives the schools a certain amount of money, and we provide the funds to the students, but once it's gone, it's gone. So once it runs out, there's no more. To get the SEOG grant, you have to be Pell eligible. So if you don't have the Pell Grant, then you wouldn't be eligible for the Supplemental Opportunity Grant. And this is determined by the school. They can decide how much they're going to give to a student. I mean, for us, when we have the funds, we usually do about 1,000 until it runs out. The next item is the direct federal Stafford loan. So this loan you have to pay back. There's two different types of Stafford loans. There's a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. Both loans, this current year, the interest rate is actually is very low this year. It's 2.75%. For next year, we don't know yet. The government usually tells us July 1st, what the interest rate is going to be. So the interest rate right now, like I said, is 2.75. The difference between the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan is the subsidized loan, it's a need-based one. So there's no interest when you're in school. So basically you go to school, and then when you start repaying back the loan, it's going to be the principal amount. The unsubsidized loan, interest starts right away once it's dispersed, when it's released to school. So you can either pay the interest when you're in school, or you can defer it. But if you defer it, it just accrues over time. So instead of it being the principal amount, it's the principal amount plus the interest that accrued while you're in school. Repayment for this loan is 6 months after you graduate. So after you graduate, I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions after you're done with school saying, oh, how do I start paying back the loans? We send information. I'm sure every school does this, but they send the information about exit counseling. So it educates you about different ways of paying back the loan. So as far as the loan limits, your first year, you are able to get a total of $5,500 in a Stafford loan. The max that you can get in a subsidized loan is $3,500. Your sophomore year, you can get a total of $6,500, and out of the $6,500, you can get a max of $4,500 in a subsidized loan. And then your junior and senior year, you can get $7,500, and the max that you can get in a subsidized loan is $5,500. Also, I know I covered the items below, but there is a part where it says origination fee. I just added that on because it's basically a transaction fee. So say when you get your award letter, you see that you have a loan for $3,500. On your bill, you're going to see it slightly lower because the government takes that percentage out of the loan. So unfortunately, every federal loan has an origination fee. So if you decide that you want to take the loan, you have to do 3 requirements. You have to do a master promissory note. You have to do an annual student loan acknowledgement and a Stafford entrance counseling at studentaid.gov. So the first one is the ASLA, the student loan acknowledgement. This is actually a brand new item that is starting next year. So you have to do this every year. You're basically acknowledging that you understand your responsibility to repay the loan. So every year you have to go on and submit that. The other two items, the master promissory note is basically a contract with the government. You're basically promising the government you're going to pay back the loans. It takes about 5 minutes to do. And then the entrance counseling, it's basically an interactive session providing information about your loans. It's more like a budgeting exercise. Believe me, it's a lot better than what it used to be. So it should take you about 20-30 minutes to do. The good thing is the master promissory note and the entrance counseling, it's a one-time thing as long as you're at that school for your whole undergrad. But it's important that you get this done because if you don't, the loan will not process. And for us, once we try processing the loans, we see which loans have been processed, and then we start sending reminders to students. The other item is work study. Work study is also a campus-based program where the government gives, like I said, gives you a certain amount of funds and you use it up until it's gone. Work study has nothing to do with the bill. It's just extra money that you can earn. So basically work study is where you're working on campus and you get a paycheck. Depending on which school, they'll tell you what your limit is. For us, this current year, a student can earn up to $3,600 in the academic year. And it is, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for any other schools, but I know, well, for us, there's limited jobs. Even though you're offered, I mean, you're eligible for work study, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed. But if you do get a job on campus and you're working, you'll get minimum wage and you'll get paid hourly, and your paychecks come bi-weekly. All right, state aid. So going back to the step 2 in the previous earlier. So the TAP application is aid from the state. So it's a separate application. The good thing about the TAP application is it's a shorter application because a lot of the information from the FAFSA transfers over to the state application. So as I said before, you can do the TAP application after the FAFSA is submitted. But if you decide you want to do it later, you have to wait about 3 days. You would go to tapweb.org. Usually if you have an income of about like 100,000 or more, you don't qualify for a TAP. The TAP ranges from 500 to 5,165. You have to be a New York State resident going to a New York State school to get this aid. Institutional aid, they can come in different forms. I just listed a couple here. The Presidential Scholarship, the Dean's Scholarship. It's just money that the school is giving to help reduce the cost of education. There might be some grants, like we have a Damon College grants that we also give students based on their financial need. There's also the merit scholarships, like I said, the Dean's and the Presidential. So it's just money that the school gives you to help reduce the cost. So I threw this in because, like I stated earlier, depending on the financial aid, there might be some instance where you don't have enough financially to cover, based on the award letter, you might not have enough to cover the balance. So I just wanted to kind of go over this with you just so you have more understanding of what your options could be. So the first option to help cover your remaining balance is you could look for outside scholarships. On our website, if you search external scholarships, you'll see a whole list of different scholarships on there because foundations continuously email us. And what we do is we look over the website to make sure it's legit. Or you can look into your community to see if there's any scholarships out there. The rule of thumb is you definitely want to make sure there's no scams. I'm sorry, the rule of thumb is if they're asking you to pay to do the application, then it's a scam because they shouldn't be asking for money if you need money. So option 2 is a payment plan. Some colleges and universities offer this. For our school, we take the remaining balance for the semester and you can make it into like a 4 or 5 or 2 monthly payment plan. But usually there's like a finance fee that they add to the first payment. And usually also there is a promissory note that goes along with the payment plan, just saying you promise that you will, make the payments. The direct federal Parent Plus loan, this is a federal loan that the parents can take out for their student. To apply for it, it's on studentaid.gov. So there's 2 ways for this. So if the parent applies for it, once they submit the application, it's going to tell them right away if they're approved or not approved. If the parent is approved, the parent can take up to the cost of attendance in this loan, but just remember the loan is in the parent's name and the parent would pay it back. Repayment for this loan is 6 months after the student's done with school. The interest rate this current year is 5.3%. Like I said, every July 1st, we will find out the interest rate. This is a fixed rate. There also, oh, I forgot to mention this. So going back to once you submit it, if it's approved, the parent can take up to the cost of attendance in this loan. The other side of it is, say the parent applies for it and they get denied based on their credit. Instead of it being a Parent Plus loan, what happens is the student automatically receives an additional unsubsidized loan for $4,000 for the year. So going back to those Stafford loans, you get an additional $4,000 to help cover your balance. Another thing to know about the Plus loan, if it's approved and the parent takes it out, there is an origination fee of 4.228% this year, which means, again, so say you're taking out $5,000, the government's going to take 4.228% out. So you're getting less than what you requested, but you have to pay back the original amount. And like I said earlier, repayment is 6 months after the student's done with school. And the last option is a private loan. Because most cases, college students don't have the credit, they most likely need a credit-worthy cosigner. But you can look at private financial institutions like Sallie Mae, Discover, Citizens. I also put a website down there, elmselect.com, and that will give you a comparison of the benefits and services of each lender. But if you have any questions, you can always talk to your representative. Their number will be on that website. And that is everything in my presentation. So let me just exit out. Okay.
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah. I have a question before you open it up for everybody else.
Yes.
A lot of families probably have had some major changes to their income due to COVID. And their income may be drastically different than it was 2 years ago on their tax returns. How is that? How do they address that with the financial aid?
They have to do it individually. So what I would do is I would reach out to the institution that they're interested in, because every school is going to handle it differently. So I know we have, it's called an income reduction worksheet, where we need certain documents as far as what they earned. Some people got the stimulus plan, the stimulus check. So there's different factors in it. So my biggest recommendation is just reaching out and explaining the situation to them, and then they will tell you what they need from the student. So then they can reevaluate what's on the FAFSA, because obviously, like you said, it's not really reflecting correctly, because a lot of families lost a lot of money during that time period.
So they would fill out the FAFSA still, from their 2019 tax return, but then they'd contact, if they were applying to Damon, they would contact the financial aid office at Damon and ask to speak to somebody to just talk about how they could make an amendment to it, or?
Correct. Yeah, we would hear what happened and more information. We go on a person by person basis. Yeah. But I would go by what's on the current tax information from 2019, and then reach out to the institution, because each institution handles it differently.
Okay. So, and then I have another question. So you said, you can add up to 10 schools when you're doing this. And I'm always encouraging the kids to do the FAFSA, even maybe before they have formally submitted their applications to these schools.
Yes.
And people become apprehensive about doing that, but there's no harm in doing that, correct?
No, right. No, not at all. What you can do is you can fill it out, put the schools that you want to want the information to go to, And like I said, the school isn't going to package a student unless they're accepted. So what you could do is you can have the FAFSA sent to them, and then once they get accepted, they can just call the institution and say, hey, I submitted a FAFSA, I just got accepted, I was wondering when my financial aid package, because the financial aid office, like for us, we run reports to get the new accepted students, and then we grab FAFSA. So we try to keep up with that, but it doesn't hurt for the student to reach out to the financial aid office to give them a heads up saying, hey, I just got accepted. Can you tell me when I should expect my package? So I would definitely get it done with and add all the schools that you want the information to go to.
Now, I usually tell my students there is not a deadline to do the FAFSA, like if they think there's a certain date they have to have it in by, but I encourage them to get it done early. Yes. So I saw a couple people had on their questions like, is financial aid first come, first serve? Well,
I know that there's some grants, like going back to that campus-based program where there are certain funds, but for us, we determine, I can't speak for any other school, but for us, like say if we determine their financial need, we will add like the SEOG grant, and then we'll add our institutional aid. If by any chance the SEOG grant is gone, we'll just give more of our institutional aid. So for us, it doesn't matter if you file late, you're still going to get the same amount of aid.
Okay. So I could keep asking questions, but I want to open it up to the parents too. You guys can ask, you can unmute your microphone and ask, or if you feel more comfortable, you can put it in the chat box. Okay, so Amir, I love that you're asking that question, but I think Maggie's specialty is more financial aid, where that would be a question when we do our Google Meet with the admissions counselor with you and to ask. But that is a great question.
Was it about the merit scholarship?
No, he wanted to know if you have any space programs.
Oh, I don't know. Sorry.
Okay, and then we have another question. Do we need to fill out the FAFSA every year while the student is in college?
Yes, every year you want to file it, and it opens up every October 1st. But you don't have to do it on October 1st, but it's better to get it done and over with so then you don't have to worry about it.
And that's why you were saying it's so important to remember your information, your login information, because you're using that every year, correct? Yeah. You're not creating new log information. That's the same year to year to year. That's why it's important.
You're going to use it. Yeah, you're going to use it your whole undergrad. You're going to use it if you decide to go on to graduate school. Anytime that you file the FAFSA, you will be using that information. So that's why they provide security questions. They make sure that it's linked to your email. They also link it to like your cell phone number just in case you get locked out of it. So yeah, you want to make sure you keep that information. And then also on the side note, I forgot to mention this, for the TAP application, you're going to have to create a separate username and PIN number. So you want to keep that handy as well. But if you forget it, there's always a way to retrieve it.
Okay, now I have another great question. It says, what if there is an absent parent in the household?
As far as, so if they're like divorced, separated, or there's a death, like, okay.
I'm asking like as if like when it comes to doing the application, like I've never been married, do they question about the other parent's income if they've never been in the household?
Oh, that's a great question. No, you would exclude them. You would put just your information on it. It would be based on who is in the household. So it would just be your information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
For separated parents, you will go, it's whoever filed for that child in that year that they're going off of.
No, actually, no, it's, that's I hear that a lot, but it's actually who takes care of them more than 50% of the time, who they're with mostly. Yeah. But if it's 50-50, you can just kind of decide, you can just pick one. It doesn't matter who claimed them on the taxes.
That's great. Okay, I'm glad we clarified that. What other questions do you guys have? We had, by aid, do you mean we have to pay this money back?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
By aid, do you mean we have to pay this money back?
Well, there's, when it comes to aid, there's different forms of aid. There's grants, there's scholarship, and there's loans. Anytime you hear scholarships or grants, that's free money. You do not have to pay that back. But anytime you see a loan, then you would have to pay that back.
Okay, what about, is there a certain threshold? Like, is there a certain amount of money that a household might make where they would not then qualify for financial aid?
See, that's a tough question because it's kind of going back to that large formula that I said that determines what the expected family contribution is. There's so many factors that go into it. I mean, if you make a ton of money, like a ton, then there's not going to be a lot of aid. But there's other factors like who's in college, who's in the household, like all those factors determine what the expected family contribution is. So it's kind of hard to tell you what a package is going to look like for a certain person because everyone's different. You can make the same amount of money as one person, but their household might be different. So they might get more aid or the other person might get more aid. It can go both ways.
That makes sense. What if the student is not going to be going to school full time? What if they decide they're going to go part time?
That's fine. You have to be at least part time. You can't go less than part time. So to get federal aid, you have to take 6 or more credits. If you go below that, then there's no financial aid. The only thing is if you go less than full time, you might not get any institutional aid, meaning like say you were offered like a merit scholarship. The merit scholarship will tell you that to get this scholarship, you have to be full-time. So if you're part-time, you could qualify for like the federal loans or even the Pell Grant, depending on your expected family contribution.
Okay, does anybody else want to ask any more questions? Again, you can just put it in the chat if you don't want to actually ask it.
Are the students automatically screened for academic merit scholarships?
Great question again.
That
is more of an admissions questions. You mean as far as like the merit scholar, like the
yes? So like if they're applying for a school, are they automatically when they submit their information from high school, are they automatically screened for merit scholarship to see like based on their academic that they perform well when they qualify for a scholarship?
Yeah, that's a good question, but that would be more of like an admissions question.
Okay.
So once you submit the application, I don't want to say the wrong information to you, but I'm assuming what happens is you submit the application, they tell you, congratulations, you're accepted. And I think later on, they within maybe a week, they send you a letter telling you what merit scholarship you're going to get. And then the admissions counselor or the admissions department tells us what merit scholarship you have, and then we put that on your award letter. But
okay, so do they know how to apply? Like, is this something that they say they have to notify the school that they want to be considered as a candidate for, or is it automatically part of the process?
It should be automatic. So once you submit the SATs, the cumulative GPA, the admissions department determines it. They use this matrix to determine what merit scholarship. So it should be automatic.
Okay. And does the school guidance counselor help the kids with applying for certain scholarships outside of having to do the FAFSA, or is that something the student has to do on their own? The
student would have to do on their own. Yeah. I mean, There might be some, as far as outside scholarships, they would want to do it by themselves to see. But if you look on the websites of different financial aid offices, I'm sure that there's some links where there's outside scholarships available that they can apply for. I can tell you right now, if you go to the Damon website and you go to the search button, you can search external scholarships, and we continuously add to that list. Also, there might be some schools that might help students with the FAFSA. Our school doesn't because we're so small, but I'm sure maybe other schools do. I can't really speak for them. But anytime you have any issues with anything, you can always give us a call or stop by, and we can help you out.
Okay. And Erin, does the guidance counselor, when it comes to the students, when they start making these decisions, is there any help or guidance with them with making these decisions and applying for scholarships, or is it kind of up to the parents for them at that point to kind of start applying for scholarships, or does the guidance counselor at school kind of help us with that?
So that would be me. That would be part of my position. So I'm responsible. I advertise the scholarships, and I can help the kids fill them out. And I help them submit them a lot. And there's a variety of scholarships that are offered specifically through our school. So they're not competing with kids nationwide. It's just for our school. And we get in, you know, they start to come in usually the second half of the year. There are things that are offered through maybe like Cheektowaga, Western New York, Buffalo, and then specifically Cleveland Hill.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There was that question that you said that caters to males and it'll kick out
the selective service.
What is the question again?
So what they're gonna ask, they're gonna say like what gender, and then if you put male, they're going to ask if you want to register for selective service. If you don't register, you have to register if you're between the ages 18 to 25. If you don't say register me, you won't be eligible for any federal aid.
Okay, so we want to say yes to that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And if by any chance you forget, what will happen, like for us, if we see that there's a red flag, like we usually get some type of like notice that there was like some type of error. If we see that a student didn't say, if a male student did not say register me, we will send a letter in the mail saying you either have to go through your FAFSA and say register me and resubmit, or go to the sss.gov website and then show us documentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I'm reading through some more of these questions. What happens if you don't qualify for financial aid, but you still need it?
Well, everyone qualifies for financial aid because by filing the FAFSA, you're eligible for the federal loan. So loans are considered financial aid. So if that financial aid, the loans and the merit scholarship isn't enough, you can always go back to how I went over the 3 different options to come up with helping to pay the remaining balance, such as take out a private loan or take out a Parent Plus loan.
Okay. And what type of assets, can you give like some examples, count against you for getting financial aid?
Yeah, I printed some out. So when it comes to assets, before I kind of go through what I printed out, there is, if you get to that point and you don't remember what I said, or you need more help trying to determine what type of assets to put on the FAFSA, there's that question mark that's right next to the question, and it will lay out everything you need to include. But based on the assets, they are including like if you have rental property, I had it right here. Sorry, let me just real estate, trust funds, stocks. But it doesn't include like if you're saving up in your retirement, nothing like that.
What about cars? Somebody asked about if somebody's stepfather owned a classic car prior to marriage.
That wouldn't affect it because they don't ask about cars on it. So they wouldn't have to worry about that.
Great. Okay. Somebody's asking, does the school require a certain dollar amount for down payment based on what is in your bank account?
Oh, like how will it affect? Well, once again, it all goes back to that expected family contribution, how it's calculated, but they just wanted like a snapshot of what the financial is. So I'm assuming by the time they do their FAFSA, it's already going to show the money in their bank account. So, I mean, I don't really know how it would impact it. I would just say you would put on the FAFSA so if you file the FAFSA today, you have to do it based on what it's currently saying in your bank account.
Okay. And if you have a 529, is that needed for the FAFSA?
Actually, the 529, I know that is also a part of the assets as well. But as far as what do you mean, like needed for the FAFSA? You mean like is it included, like where they have to tell the FAFSA that they have a 529? Is that what the question is, or how it plays a role in paying the tuition?
I don't
know.
That's what I was going to say is, do you need like the amount when you're filling out the FAFSA form if you have a 529 for your student?
Yeah, so when it gets to the assets, that's where you would put the 529 information.
And if you're still 17 when filling out the FAFSA, will they allow you to register for financial aid? Oh, will they allow you to register for the selective service?
No, they wouldn't. No, it's based on how old they are at the time they file. But for the next year, when they're 18, when they're a sophomore, then they would have to register.
Okay, good questions. Anybody else? This is like a lot of information to digest in a presentation. Yes. And Maggie does this for a living. So this is all, like, if this sounds very confusing to you, that's probably very normal. And I have helped families.
Yes, very
normal to be confused by this. I have helped families fill out their FAFSA. They've come in and worked in my office to fill it out. And last year we did some virtually. I'm happy to help you guys do that. And usually you can reach out to a college specifically if you're going to apply there and ask for some help too as well, because it is a very confusing process. So this is meant to be an overview. And that's why Maggie did include her email in the chat too, so that you guys can call or send her an email when you guys have some more questions. And when you're filling it out, I encourage you, you can reach out to me too. I'm not a financial aid counselor, but I certainly help families with this process. Anybody else have any last questions before we, or did I miss any in the chat?
For the selective services, so do you have to do anything when you select those, or is it just an option? Is it just an option on
it's just an option. Yeah, it's just an option. I think I haven't, I'm just trying to see figure out how it, because I tried to test out myself, but it didn't work for me, just to see what it looks like on the FAFSA, but there should be an option where it says register me on there.
And somebody asked too, I saw, does this work, does the FAFSA work if you go to a private school? And the answer is yes, you have to fill out the FAFSA no matter where you're applying. Yes. And even if you don't think you're going to qualify, most schools have you fill out the FAFSA. Am I correct in that, Maggie? Even if you're sure you're not going to qualify, you still have to fill out the FAFSA for them.
Well, I would say definitely. I mean, if you know you don't qualify and you don't want to take any, I mean, I always say just fill it out just to see what you get, because you never know. I've heard people say, I'm not going to get anything and I'm just going to get loans. They might end up getting something out of it. If you don't want loans, you don't have to take them. You just have to let the counselor know. But I do know that there's some students where they've filed in the FAFSA and their parents' income is so high that they just get loans and they don't want it, so they don't file. You don't have to file, but I would suggest to do it if you just to see.
Thank you. Anything else? Oh, Janelle. Okay, let's see. When you're paying off your loans, is there interest?
Yes, interest accrues when you're paying, yeah. But like I said, when you finish school, you will get a letter in the mail called exit counseling, and it goes through everything you need to know. I believe it also sets you up for starting your payments, but it gives you the different payment options, and it goes through all the questions that you have. And then also once you're, if you have any questions in particular to your loan, so what happens is once we release the funds to the school, you will get a notice about who your servicer is. So even though the loans are going to us, we're not the servicer. So what happens is the government randomly selects a company to oversee your loan. So it could be like Navient, Great Lakes. So you'll get a notice. It's called a disclosure letter. It'll have their information, their contact information. So if you have any questions about your loan or concerns or any of that, you can always contact them. And if you don't get that email or letter, you can always contact your financial aid office and we can always search it for you.
Okay, Maggie, I really appreciate your time in doing this and giving, like, sharing your information and everything. And just thank you for sharing your evening.
Yeah, no problem. And like I said, if you have any questions afterwards that maybe you were afraid to ask, or you just thought of after I got off, you can definitely email me and I will get back to you. I'm just a heads up, if you do email me tomorrow, I'm actually out of the office, but I will get back to you on Monday.
Okay, guys, and I'm available too. You guys can always email me or send me a message on Remind or call me, and you know, if I don't know the answer, I'll help you find it. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Well, have a great night, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.